Alrighty, hello every folks, and good morning. So we're on version 108A of One Vision. Effectively, don't worry, you didn't miss one. 108 got pretty much immediately changed into 108A with a few corrections. Even the patch notes are all merged together. So let's go ahead and cover this real quick. So first off, in the general category, Festa and her team are now outfitted more defensively, so they should be easier to rescue. So this sounds like a Sistina situation that folks are having a bit of difficulty getting her on neutral route, especially considering that the second note here is that she joins as a White Knight with Augment Light. So for those that didn't know, most neutral characters either got a unique class to them or have something else unique about them, like for example, Tammuz is your flying lizard man. But when it comes to Festa, yeah, she actually replaces Ravnus as the White Knight, since Ravnus got Freya a little while back. Alright, next is Lancelot. He's going to be joining with Aug Fire instead of Aug Light. Basically, he's switched elements a few times to try to give elements seemingly equal representation and stuff like that, which I guess kind of fits with his whole, like, kind of whole Burning Crusade vibe. Because this dude's just been slaughtering stuff for years in-game at this point. Anyway, moving on here. Heal 2, so this is going to be one of the kind of dangling threads from version 107. Heal 2 and All Heal 2 are going to be dropping in the same locations that Heal 4 and Heal 3 used to. So for Heal, that's going to be the female Nephilim in San Bronza number 5, Floating Ruins 5, I should say. All Heal 2 is going to be the Hawkman Cleric in San Bronza at Floating Ruins number 12. Additionally, I want to say that there's actually... it's not listed here, but I remember them dropping from story fights as well, because I know in this particular run, I have gotten Heal 2 from a random story fight in Chapter 4, so there's other locations as well. Alright, so patch 1.08 was live for a very short time, so the notes were merged with 108A for easier reading. Alright, now this next one I love. So, throwing weapons have now been split into 4 types. Heavier variants are throwing axes and spears, which are best used as primary weapons, and the lighter variants are slashers and bolas, which are better suited as sidearms. Some are available in shops, others as an upgrade to lower level versions, and all versions have a high level representative. And so to show you what this means, so this actually changed the loadout for my dude over here. So basically, yeah, we have a different kind of debuffs as well as different kind of ranges and everything else for these now, so they feel a lot more kind of distinct here. And additionally, this gives standard throwing axes kind of their own vibe. I was kind of wondering why we hadn't had a split here, but figured it probably wasn't something to really worry about, considering, like, there's so many different kinds here. So yeah, essentially we've got double the throwing weapons now. So yeah, throwing axes are going to do breach, potentially breach on impact. We've got hobbles coming off of javelins, which really helped out this particular guy. We've got binds on the various types of bolas, and then the slashers, which originally I was thinking were going to turn out to be boomerangs somehow. A bit too much Phantasy Star in the brain, apparently. But yeah, so those are going to be the ones that are hitting with slow. Either way, they've all got different bits and pieces. Personally, I really like the kind of comfortable range that showed up on throwing spears at this point, but it's just really cool to see that these are specifically a category. I love the idea of throwing spears, but before you typically just like upgraded directly into axes, and it's like, well, I mean, I guess it makes sense, but I kind of want to throw that spear at a distance. So those got a bit more love this time around. Okay, next up, okay, it just goes over the categories here. So, throwing axes have the shortest range, but do the most damage and can inflict breach. Throwing spears do a bit less damage and have the longest range, but can inflict hobble. Slashers have a lower range and moderate damage, but can inflict slow. Bolas have a bit more range, similar to rippers, and can inflict bind. Also, the Lombardia is now fire element. It swaps some of its agility bonus for mind and has a fear immunity. Added a slightly weird one-handed whip that can be crafted with Secrets of the Master. I'm really curious to see what that is. I actually forgot to check what that is. So let's go ahead and load up a thing here, because I want to see what the hell that is. We had a bit of an interesting agreement, quiet accidental agreement that happened between One Vision and Reborn, where just the one-handed whips were gone. Here, let's see what we got here. What kind of one-handed whip did we get here? So we got the Agenai. Interesting. A strange weapon that launches a thin steel wire at the target, delivering a powerful shock. Huh. Interesting. So it's essentially a pocketed shock whip. That's pretty cool. I like that. What does that look like? Hang on, let's get into a fight real quick. I want to see what that thing looks like. That's pretty freaking neat. So yeah, we've got a lot of really oddball weapons in OV, but like that's a new one. I like the idea. We'll see how it goes. Considering the other lightning kind of themes of this particular update here, I'm wondering if there's a bit more of a story here. But anyways, we'll see that in a moment. I just want to see the animation for this thing. All right, next up, Terror Knights can equip all one-handed swords. They can still use only the Power Fist and Focus shields, but they don't have to wait for the Wukong Blade to start using them. So basically, yeah, for those that never tried it before, the Terror Knight previously had one-handed swords, except you could side grade them to use both hands, and I mean it worked, but essentially to use a one-handed thing. Oh, it is like a regular gun animation. Interesting. Anyway, so to use a what the hell was I getting at here? So yeah, basically to use two-handed swords in one hand, you had to wait till the Wukong Blade started. But if you want to run a one-handed plus power fist build, well, you now have that option way earlier. So finally, the art for the Terror Knight kind of, sort of, mostly makes sense. Yeah, if you've never tried it, or sorry, if you've never seen it, the official artwork for the Terror Knight shows them with a sword and shield, which they can't use in any version. It's weird. Anyway, it's just how they drew them. So, let's see. Yeah, I don't know. The one-handed whip thing, interesting idea. I was kind of expecting it to do like more of a swingy animation, but I'm not sure if one of those exists for that particular icon or that particular sprite. Anyway, let's go ahead and move on here. So, Ninja can transfer whips from other classes. Okay, right. That would make sense. That would make sense. Anyway, so that potentially a fun little way to have a sort of gun whip ninja at this point. So it's basically a taser. Like it's legit just like a taser in the whip category. That's such an oddball thing. I love it. Okay, you can only get it from Palace of the Dead anyway. Like basically, Secrets of the Master has some of the weirdest stuff. Like you got rocket spears, you got the Crusagram, you got you now have a taser. Anyway, let's move on. All right, so White Knight can now use some offensive magic. Their set is now a combination of Knight and Dragoon plus Dispel. So Dispel was already a pretty solid sell on its own. What kind of offensive magic do they get? Here, let's see. Do we have any extras? Not Judgments. They get Dispels. They get Mute, apparently. They've always had Hearten. Okay, let's go to the shop. Maybe they get Basic Missiles or something, or they get Bursts? Oh, shoot, if they get Bursts, I know some stuff I'm changing immediately. Because, yeah, bursts are... bursts are pretty cracked. Okay, yeah, so apparently you can have bursts on your White Knights now. Awesome. As well as Sun Spears. Interesting. Okay, so they've gotten... As if they weren't amazing before, they got even more amazing. All right, yeah, for those that didn't know, if you ever have issues ever hitting anything, bursts, like, they don't miss. They don't miss. They have an AoE. They're pretty cheap. Like they're a very reliable source of everything. Which, by the way, sorry it's taking so long to do the One Vision newbies guide thing. I've made more drafts than I'm willing to admit for that particular one, and something comes up in the middle of the video every single time. So either way, I apologize. That'll get done at some point. Alright, let's see what else we got here. Paladin Freya can now use fire magic, has access to fire spells, is the same for lightning spells with an addition of a unique spell called Balefire. The class lost access to Consecrate as it now serves a dual purpose. Interesting. Don't know where you get Balefire from. Alright, Knight Commander lost access to Intercession. Sacred Fist has lost access to Cross Chop and Lariat. The class isn't a strong damage dealer and can't be empowered like monsters, so the ability would be a poor fit. He got the Holy War special instead, as the status effect on it would likely be more useful, and can now learn the Healing Strike special skill, which is an interesting one. We'll get to that in a moment. Added Harbinger slash Furia, a special class for Aerosel. It requires Tempest's marks, which are only on Chaos and neutral routes, which actually, for those that are wondering, you can use the turn any unit into any class cheat to just go ahead and make yourself one if you want to experience that, but don't happen to be on the on Chaos or neutral that particular time. So that's what I was doing here. Anyway, yeah, sorry, I only had like 30 minutes to actually go and test things out last night, but Anyway. Alright, so the class can equip daggers, bows, archer gear, and mage gear. Passive skill access is similar to archer with the addition of standard passives for hybrid mages. Instill lightning, counter 2, bash 2 to 3, intercession, eagle eye, dragonfly, and stormfront. So this means that she can basically ignore elevation with dragonfly. Now it's not completely ignoring elevation, but basically she can warp herself one tile regardless of elevation, so that opens up a lot of opportunities. And additionally, here, let's go ahead and go to this right here. By the way, she would probably show up as Aircel in this particular screen on yours, but because I cheated her in, she's going to show up as a generic, probably. Does she get shurikens as a... Yeah, she does still have shurikens. Stats-wise, going very heavily for dex, no shocker there, but also pretty high mind and intelligence. Now, the reason for this, which I'm pretty sure they're going to mention in a moment here, let's see, they can use 2 bow arts, Conduit at rank 1 and Levin Array at rank 5. The special selection includes Thunder Flare 1, 2, and 3, Stun Bomb, Rattle, and the unique spell Storm's End, which I think it mentions where you get that. Alright, so then we get to the biggest section, which is just going to be the spells and abilities. So alright, so it was proven that only light and dark prevailing element actually works properly, so only those spells will affect it from now on. To make the mechanic less susceptible to spamming low-cost abilities, it will now only be affected by powerful ones, including Summons, Forbidden, Spirit Bomb, Grim Dawn, Day of Reckoning, Celestial Aria, and Requiem. The amount has been increased to about 1/10 of the MP or TP cost, so each use should be more noticeable. So if you want to spam Holy and Dark abilities, then you'll see some interesting stuff. Okay. Prevailing Element now affects Divine's heal spells at 50% strength. It was scaling too well after the healing rework. And I'm sure some will have seen this in action with, like, God forbid you're doing any boss fights with clerics. Basically, if they got Healcraft going, they could potentially heal up to 500 with a basic heal. Like, granted, the AI wasn't very good at exploiting it, but, oof, it could get nutty. Anyway, so yeah, it was scaled down a decent bit, and also Healcraft got moved around. We'll get to that in a second. So, to reduce their reliance on RNG, summons will now strike 1 to 2 times, but the damage per hit was increased to compensate. Their MP and RT cost has been increased, and the level requirements of Summon 1 has been increased to 24. Spell healing has been nerfed somewhat, as it could scale too high. Also, I just realized that's why my casters couldn't use summons anymore. Anyway... Alright, so spell healing has been nerfed somewhat as it could scale too high, especially later on, but it received a fixed bonus amount to compensate at low levels. It now gets 0.8 per mind, 6 per augment rank, and 8 per racial rank. Tirana costs more MP, so that's going to be one of the Paladin and Freya abilities. Added Storm's End, an expensive spell that deals heavy lightning damage to targets in a large area and has a 50% chance to halve their TP. So yeah, everything about the Furia here, and or Harbinger if you make them a dude, is basically going to be about Aracel there. She is supposed to be the Thunder Maiden after all, so she gets all kinds of interesting lightning moves and whatever else. It never did make sense how she managed to get so many kills as just, a basic archer, but in this particular case, if she's able to shut down finishers with lightning spam and such, that's pretty interesting. Also, she actually became a pretty interesting support there, but we'll get to that in a moment. Alright. Purify now scales like divine spells, but it doesn't get the fixed bonus. Added Balefire, a short-range fire spell that strikes targets in a line 1 to 3 times, so basically a summon laser. Each strike does a fire damage hit with a 50% chance for an additional one. Undead targets will always receive additional light damage. Winter Siege will also now nudge the target's RT counter a bit, roughly by 10 points, as the effect can't scale on this type of ability. By the way, for those wondering, on Paladin and Freya, yeah, that's still in post-game. Like, you're not getting that hyper early. Heal and all heal now cost more RT, and now that basic heals stay useful, they were probably a bit too spammable. Yeah, they definitely were. Heal 2 and all heal 2 now require level 26 and can't be bought in shops. We tested them enough so that they don't need to have easy accessibility anymore. Dark damage spells now have a small damage bonus versus living targets again. Lancet will now heal the target for 40% of the target's HP and also give half of the sacrificed amount back to the healing target. Or half of the sacrificed amount back after healing the target, so I guess it's like a kind of multi-way heal there in a way. Interesting. Agumo 2 and 3 also do 1 to 2 strikes like the basic Agumo, but the summons or the damage per hit is higher. So basically, those are your ninja summons. Large AoE abilities centered on self, like Galaxy Stop or Grim Dawn, have 2 more area. Nice. I knew they could do it. Hamstring Dagger art was removed. It was initially added for flavor, and I needed more room for more abilities. Smite and Purgatory sword arts now do fire damage. Added Conduit, a bow art that does lightning damage to a single target and steals its MP. Added 11 Array, a bow art that strikes enemies in a line and charges 50% of current TP to allies, which is a very interesting take on improving Electrify. Mother's Blessing doesn't have Healcraft anymore. It was fine to have it before, as a little extra was a little extra because the buff was barely doing anything. But now that it's a much more valuable buff, and considering that the entire healing amount is multiplied by the skill, it's a bit too good. Yeah, very much so. Again, 500 basic heals. Consecrate Dead was renamed to Consecrate and should also now buff allies in the target area with Healcraft, which should make it less situational. Its area of effect has been reduced to 1. It basically became a complete gimme for my clerics personally. Anyway, moving on. Reflection is now a targeted 5-tile skill, which should make it easier to buff only the targets you want. It's also cheaper now. Shadow Break now behaves like a regular target-restricted skill that can only be cast on shadows, so we don't need the ground hit animation. Kind of like that thing, it looked cool. It will now do spell damage to units and 10 damage to any obstacle. Shadows can have up to 10 HP, so that's enough to destroy them, which means that they can basically be used like C4 now. Guiding Light was renamed to Righteous Fire. It now inflicts a fire reverse and buffs the user with Firebringer. Added Healing Strike, a special skill that does a high amount of light damage, but will heal back if it doesn't kill the opponent, unless they're undead, in which case it will do additional light to spell damage instead. I love how so many of these have very situational uses. That's really fun. Virtuous Stance, Selfless Kiss, and Celestial Aria now scale like healing spells. And then lastly on Consumables, Arcana has now been reduced by roughly 30% in cost. Equipment can be reused as other characters, on other characters, but the Arcana is consumable, so maintaining a large army could get too expensive. That is mostly where a lot of my money's been going on this particular run. Added Storm's End Arcana, it drops from the Cherub in Temple of Nesthro number 4, Second Descent. Added Balefire, drops in Zoshnal, Second Descent. Added Tempest's Marks, they can only drop from Modigliani in Chapter 3, Chaos number 5. Battle number 9, Bahana Highlands, and also from Botis in Chapter 3, Neutral. In the optional fight in Kadriga during Festa Tammuz and Chamo's Rescue, or Arju in Chapter 3 Neutral. Goliath, so you'll receive them whichever the 2 battles you choose to do in the neutral route. And then monster crafting materials are more expensive. So anyways, that's all I had. That's all in the patch notes, and that's all I had time for here today. So yeah, it's a very meaty update. There's like new class updates across the board. I really love the throwing weapon updates. But anyway, that's all I have time for. So go check it out at your soonest opportunity here, and I gotta get going. Take care.